Hey guys, what's up? It is week 404. I have a bunch of reviews for you, an update as well. Let's hop right in. The first one up is from Deaf Crocodile. This is a film from 1994, animated film, and this is Felidae. I talked about this a bit when we went through 1994 for 22 shots. It was a discovery for me at that time. I really enjoyed it, and I was really happy to see a 4K Blu-ray release of this film. So Deaf Crocodile kind of specializes in a lot of Eastern European cinema, Czechoslovakian cinema, animated. They do some animated stuff, a lot of animated stuff as well. But it was an MVD partner label. They kind of branched off now. So, yeah, Felidae. This is actually a great movie. One of my favorite discoveries in 1994. It might have been the only one that I had not seen before that made my top 10 list. But the plot is as follows. We have this... it has this weird society of cats. They're much more intelligent than human beings. Give them credit for. And the main character is named Francis. Him and his owner kind of move into this new broken down house. This writer is a pulp writer. The owner, he's a pulp writer. He writes crappy books on the side. He's also deeply invested in, ancient Egyptian things like that. That's because his main hustle and his side hustle is basically writing these pulp novels, and he needs inspiration. He moved somewhere. So he moves to this rundown area, and almost immediately he meets this cat voiced by Mario Adorf, who pops up in Bird with the Crystal Plumage. This is really funny because he has a bunch of caged cats that he's eating, and this one he plays a cat, and his name is Blue Bart in the German version. This is a German film, I should mention, in German and English, your choice. Or Bluebeard in the American version. He's a great kind of tomcat, tough kind of cat here. And these two kind of team up right away, become fast friends. He starts to show them the neighborhood, and they end up stumbling on a series of murders that have been taking place where these cats' throats have been ripped out violently. This is a very violent animated movie. This isn't a child's animated film at all. And they start to dig deeper, and they discover this kind of crazy cult that electrifies cats, and this whole backstory about experimentations that bring in Mendel. The whole story, they breeding out the certain, making the perfect pea kind of deal, all this genetic stuff and weird stuff like that. A lot of the experiment flashbacks are reminiscent of Nazi Germany experiments and things like that. Some really dark imagery in the animation. The animation's really well done. There's a bunch of animators on there too, and I believe some people made fun of this movie or criticized this movie, is a better term to use, for not flowing well in its animation. But with all those different animators, I fucking think it flows wonderfully. It does have kind of a Don Bluth style to it. Felidae is an exceptionally well done, kind of maybe hidden gem at one point. I think it's finally getting a lot of recognition, and I think it deserves it. Great film, great release. The 4K looked really good. A bunch of interesting special features on here. Deaf Crocodile, I've watched a couple of their films, but I haven't really dived into their special features or anything that much until this release. They did The Visitors from Arcana Galaxy, which I believe is technically an 80 movie, and that was a wild watch. And this one, the special features I was really impressed with. So let's go through them a bit. New interview with director Michael Schaack, moderated by Dennis Bartok of Deaf Crocodile. Bartok is, a filmmaker in himself, a writer and stuff, and he's one of the people behind Deaf Crocodile. I believe the other one is Ryan Vernell, or Vernell pronunciation. I'm not sure. I've not heard it pronounced out loud, so my apologies there. But this is really good. Michael Schaack speaks English. I think that's how you say it. Or let me double check. Schaack or German. tough language. But he speaks in English during the interview. It's a long one, 40 minutes if I'm thinking correctly, but it's interesting, and Dennis brings up all the kind of allegations against the writer. I guess this writer made this series of 8 books that was very popular, but then he went on these racist rants and all these kind of anti-Semitic things, and he has since kind of isolated himself and kind of ruined his life, and in a way his career, stuff like that, and everything like that. Talks about that, isolating himself and things like that. The director talks about making this and getting it released and why they took so long to release it in the first place, finding rights and things like that. The director did some other animation. I think he did the Pippi Longstocking animated movie, but his resume is not as huge as one would expect how good this movie is. There was also new video interview with key animation team. This is a bunch of people: Doug Bennett, Paul Bolger, Edmund Butler, Bernie Dank, and Desmond Downs. And you don't really see a lot of interviews with a lot of like animators and stuff. Lately, you've been seeing some more spotlight on animators and digital effects artists and things like that, and special effects artists that aren't really the blood and guts guys. They had that Phil Tippett documentary, and Phil Tippett got some love for Mad God, and we saw the David Allen documentary about Primeval stuff. So that they are getting a little bit more attention. This is more strictly animation, and one of them even talks about moving to more CGI, working at Disney. These guys all have interesting back stories and lives and careers and stuff, and we kind of dive into that and about Felidae and all that kind of stuff like that. Good stuff there. New interview with layout designer Armin McLonian. New commentary by journalist and physical media expert Varel, The Disconnected. I'm not sure if Varel is actually connected with Deaf Crocodile. I might have been speaking out of class there. And film professor Dr. Will Dotson. That's very interesting. They even go into the breeds of cats from the book and what the characters are, like their breeds and all that stuff. Really interesting stuff. And finally, Blu-Ray. I'm turning into Bill from Code Red here. Blu-Ray authoring by David McKenzie of Fidelity in Motion. New art by Beth Morris. Yeah, this is Region A. The Blu-ray is locked. You got 2 discs here. Just an excellent release. Great movie. Highly recommended. There was a special edition. I think that's since sold out. But check out Felidae. Excellent movie. Great animated film. And it's more of a mystery, horror, giallo kind of style thing. But I think most people will really like it. It also has some sexual stuff in there. But yeah, not for the kiddies. It's Felidae. Okay, next up is another one from Deaf Crocodile, and this is Adela Has Not Had Supper Yet. This is a Czechoslovakian movie from 1978. Kind of fits in the middle of this director's kind of like a trilogy. This is the middle one. And I think Deaf Crocodile had released the third one as well. So this one is really weird, very funny, very spoofy, very goofy. We have the New York's greatest detective, and he is called to I believe he's actually called to Czechoslovakia to solve this case. And the case is a real wild one. This was also a period piece movie. It's very broad humor. In the very beginning, we have all these assassins trying to kill the detective, and it's just over-the-top goofiness. In the vein of, they would say, Pink Panther, although Pink Panther is not like a series I'm super familiar with, honestly. But, just the goofiness and the, hey, I'm trying to blow this guy up, and it backfires in my face kind of stuff, and I'm just burnt, like very cartoonish in a lot of ways. So he goes to solve this case, and the case is ridiculous. So, of course, somebody of royalty and importance, their dog went missing, and we really don't know why. But all signs point to this crazy botanist who has created this flesh-eating plant named Adela. So we have some Little Shop of Horrors style going here, and we realize that this giant elaborate plant is flesh-eating, and this villain here is planning on feeding some certain people to this plant and taking the daughter of this person and giving them to his creepy henchmen. So of course it's up to the detective to try to solve the case and all that. And people may seem maybe who they're not. There's some people going to come back from the history, from the past of this guy's life. And he also has kind of his Watson style character in here, who is a local a law official who's always eating sausages and taking him to the best kind of pubs in the area. The buildings are wonderful. The architecture is gorgeous. It's really spoofy. It's really funny. It's very, very lighthearted, and it's just an easy, fun, pleasant watch. I wouldn't say shut off your brain, because it's clever in all the right ways it should be, but it's also just kind of not in a mean-spirited kind of way. I really enjoyed this one. If you're into killer flesh-eating plants, I would highly recommend this. It's not as horror or anything like that as you would expect. Definitely kind of goofier and spoofier and fun, but clever in all the best ways. So as far as the special features are concerned, we have new restoration from original camera negative and sound elements by our Nardini Filmmaking Archive Prague. New audio commentary by Czech film expert Irina Korvona of Comeback Company and Czech film critic and screenwriter Teresa Berdekova. This is interesting because they talk about this director, the history of, the Czech films and all that kind of stuff, and where they were in history and how hard it was to get movies made under that kind of regime and all this kind of stuff like that. 4 rare Yuri Brekit animated shorts. These are all really kind of wild and bizarre. they're all different kind of things. We have Badly Drawn Hen, which is kind of fun. Little kid draws this weird looking hen and it's brought to life and gets really bizarre. Forester's Song to the Forest, What I Did I'd Not Tell the Prince, and The Miner's Rose. They start in 1963 and they end in 1974. They're all relatively 10 minutes in length. So yeah, this was fun. This was interesting. There's a lot of Eastern European cinema that I have trouble with. Czechoslovakian films are usually pretty easy for me to digest. They're bizarre and funny and goofy and have their own kind of tone to them, which I've kind of grown accustomed to over the handful of films that I've seen. Yeah, I would recommend this one. Adela has not had supper yet. Very funny title in itself. Okay, next one is the last one we're going to talk about this week from Deaf Crocodile. This is a 4K of Trapped Ashes, and this was a 2006 anthology that was partially shot at Universal Studios. And yeah, this is a wild one. Actually written the entire thing, all 5 stories in the anthology, including the wraparound by Dennis Bartok, who is the owner of Deaf Crocodile. So I was wondering, this seems like a little bit of kind of an odd title for them to kind of tackle. Maybe it's a little bit, not necessarily out of their wheelhouse in terms of year, but kind of makes sense that Bartok was the writer and he probably has access to this and everything. But I think that Trapped Ashes, when it came out in 2006, kind of got the short end of the stick. I remember watching it and being like, that was okay. Never revisited my DVD. Rewatching it this time, maybe it's that it's in glorious 4K or it's been remastered or there's some time between it. I actually think it's a pretty good anthology. So the directors are, of course, Joe Dante, Sean Cunningham, Monty Hellman, Ken Russell, and then John Gaeta, who is mostly known for an animator. He won awards and stuff doing stuff for The Matrix and things like that. Really good, with digital and kind of animated effects and stuff like that. So 2006 is a weird time. This is definitely shot on film. It looks, as far as I can tell, it looks really good for that kind of thing. A low-budget movie. A lot of the funding came from Japan. A lot of people pulled these investors together. And the wraparound's really strong. It's definitely out of an Amicus kind of anthology. You guys know Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, that style, right? Where we all, Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, where we all pull up and we're all in this room together and we're all looking at each other and they start to tell their stories. It's 100% that. I love that kind of stuff, to be honest. So the wraparound has all sorts of great people in it. Henry Gibson is doing these Hollywood kind of tours. He's driving around. The gatekeeper is Dick Miller, longtime, collaborator of Joe Dante in a million movies, and Roger Corman, of course. So they kind of riding around and they see this house that was the movie Hysteria was filmed at, which is obviously kind of a psycho house, all that kind of deal like that. So they all kind of complain that they want to see it firsthand. Henry Gibson, from Burbs, of course, but Joe Dante, ends up taking him in there. John Saxon is among the passengers and stuff like that. Love John Saxon, huge fan. So they sit in here and they realize this house is full of traps and loops and stuff, and they're getting kind of trapped in here. And Henry Gibson says, well, we're going to be stuck here for a while. Why don't we just tell each other some stories like in the movie Hysteria and see what happens? So they all start breaking down their stories. Hopefully I get these in order. The first story is Ken Russell about a crazy boob job, which is reminiscent of, the eye from Body Bags and hair from Body Bags. There's 2 shorts in that. And, or Body Parts, the Jeff Fahey one. Anytime you get this weird transplant and things go haywire, it's reminiscent of that. It probably goes all the way back to Hands of Orlok or something like that. Is it Orlok? I think it is, with Peter Lorre and stuff. So that idea that you got a bad transplant and you're going and it takes over your body, that's what we have here. So she gets these breast implants and they end up being parasitic creatures that suck blood. It's fun. Ken Russell has a little cameo in here. It's kind of a little bit sleazy side. Obviously this whole movie is a weird kind of take on Hollywood, right? This one is making that obviously actresses can't get by without having breasts, but end up, this sucking parasites and stuff like that in Hollywood. It's fun. It's a cool little concept and stuff like that. And then we have the next story here, which I believe is Sean Cunningham's story, Friday 13th, of course, New Kids. He did a couple sex comedies. I think Welcome to Spring Break is one of Sean Cunningham's movies. So these two are on a trip to Japan. It's a business trip for the guy, the husband, and he's been neglecting his wife. She ends up going to this art museum, and she gets caught up in this painting, which is it's kind of like a picture of hell, Jinoku. There's a bunch of classic Japanese horror films that are named after it. Hell in Japan, Jinoku or something like that. I can't think of it off the top of my head because, words, I'm not very good at them. But so she's staring at this painting, and the vessel looks obviously very vaginal, but also like a pit to hell. And she's approached by this Buddhist, this guy. She doesn't know who he is at first, and she becomes very interested in him. him. And she ends up going to this weird area later on where this cavern is and going in it, and she becomes kind of taken over by this weird kind of demon and everything like that, and it's up to her husband to try to rescue her. This one's really wild, filled with Japanese mythology, some good imagery. At times they use actual animation to kind of fill in the budgetary constraints. Overall, a decent little short and very different for Sean Cunningham, to be honest. I think the next one is Monty Hellman's short here. Monty Hellman, of course, the director of Two Lane Blacktop and of a bunch of movies. What else is this big one? I'm trying to think. I know he did Silent Night, Deadly Night 3. That's not one of his big titles here. But he did a couple of westerns early with Jack Nicholson and Warren Oates and stuff. Ride the Whirlwind and The Shooting. I should mention Ken Russell, the first director, obviously an infamous director for stuff like The Devils, Lair of the White Worm, Gothic, of Altered States, a slew of films. But we get back to Monty Hellman's short, and this one is wild. This is John Sack's story, of course, and it's a flashback period piece about two kind of directors here, one of which is a B-movie director, maybe in the line of Monty Hellman or Roger Corman or somebody in that line, you know what I mean? Although I don't want to kind of dismiss their work, because Monty Hellman directed some masterpieces and Corman is a god among filmmakers, horror filmmakers for sure, so maybe somebody on a lesser level than that. But this is basically the story of this kind of B-movie director befriending Stanley Kubrick, and Kubrick kind of blossoming into this fantastic director. And what happens is they meet each other every day for chess. They have kind of like a buddy romance kind of thing going on, a man crush, if you will. And the two of them start to get separated because Stanley Kubrick brings this woman in, and she seems very bizarre, and there's obviously a lot of sexual tension between all three of them. But what happens is Stanley Kubrick eventually leaves, and his buddy sleeps with this woman, and he kind of realizes actually who she is and what she is, and that's a little nice twist on that. Overall, this one's decent, solid. I can appreciate them kind of adding Stanley Kubrick in here. Really bizarre kind of thing. This is a whole anthology in the Amicus style as a story of kind of evil Hollywood, and a lot of these are, not all of them. And the final story is by John Gaeta. Gaeta, it's Jaeta, I believe is how you say his last name. Spell his last name, but I'm not 100% on the pronunciation. But this story is one of the weird ones too. Again, kind of takes place in I think it's Italy or France at first, and the family moves. She's a young daughter in this. They move because they're like working in a vineyard, own their vineyard. I think they moved to California, have their own vineyard and everything like that. And her father is constantly sleeping with her mother's best friend, causing this affair. And the mother gets pregnant. And they tried really hard, and she's pregnant with, of course, our character telling the story, but also a tapeworm. And they can't operate to get rid of the tapeworm with the medicines or anything like that because it's going to kill the baby. So she has to constantly feed this baby and grow these tapeworms together. The young girl thinks she's telling the story. She has this bond with this tapeworm, and it gets really weird and crazy. And as she gets older, she starts to resent her father for what he did and his stepmother, and it gets fucking crazy and weird and bizarre. And I really liked this one. I thought the story was really solid. At the end, we have a nice little, obvious what you expect it to be, right? It's very Amicus. I'll leave it at that. I like that kind of stuff. I was raised on the anthology film and the anthology horror television show, so it's definitely in my wheelhouse. As far as special features are concerned, we have director's cut of Monty Hellman's Stanley's Girlfriend episode, original full-length cut of Ken Russell's The Girl with the Golden Breast, which is about 28 minutes, original 5-part making of video with cast and crew interviews, Hollywood Parasite, Hysteria Trapped in Ashes, new video essay by journalist and physical media expert Ryan Vernell, The Disconnected, and film professor Dr. Will Dotson. I think this is the 15-minute short that kind of says everything is like parasitic and stuff, and I thought that was really good, and connected all of them, gave them a lot of glue and DNA together, and I thought that was interesting and a good way to look at films, and a nicely edited video essay. 3 new video interviews, which are gargantuan. Director John Gaeta, cast members Jason Bartok, Scott Lowell, and Lisa Tribble, who I believe is actually Ken Russell's ex-wife, or not ex-wife, widow. Producers Yoko Yoshihara and Yoshifumi Hasoya, and cinematographer Zohan Popovic, who did moderated by producer-writer Dennis Bartok. That is long, 78 minutes. Good stuff, good information. And then we have another one of those cast members, Tamak Peckett and Tig Runyon, and production designer Rob Wilson King, also moderated by Bartok. And they talk about their acting careers, getting started, all that kind of stuff like that. And producer Mike Fishliv of Nomadic Pictures. This is so 40 minutes or so. Talks about getting the money and all the kind of fun stories and Universal, and talking about the cameras they used, and the Steadicam, super heavy. Overall, really nice release for a movie that I don't think a lot of people love, or if they didn't like it, they never gave it another shot. I think you should give Trapped Ashes another shot. I enjoyed it much better than I remembered. Maybe it's just that filmmaking has changed so much, and this is more in line with some of the older stuff that I really liked. But overall, Trapped Ashes, worth looking into, looked really good, and some of the digital effects really held up, but good stuff. Okay, next up is an upgrade. This is from 1976. This is from Arrow Video. This is directed by Alfred Soul, who didn't direct as many movies as we all would have liked. This is the 4K of Alice, Sweet Alice, aka Holy Communion. Probably another movie, a title, Holy Terror, probably is actually Communion and Holy Terror. That's the title. But this one obviously lives kind of in infamy as one of the proto slashers, although I think it's more in line with a Giallo proto, actually Giallo, or just a slasher, really. So Brooke Shields, everybody mentions Brooke Shields being in this, and she is in this early role. Small role, but good role. There's two sisters, one of which is kind of a troublemaker, always getting in trouble. No one really likes her. She's not the pretty girl, I guess is what you would say, in that kind of general classic context in these kind of movies. And we have Brooke Shields, who's always the pretty girl, always being like loved and all that kind of stuff. And this is very much a Catholic kind of environment, a Catholic film, the backdrop, church, everything's very important. And we have, their mother is kind of separated from the husband, and he's been like kind of seeing someone else. He no longer lives with them, so they're kind of like living in sin in this Catholic community, if you will. And in the very beginning, they're supposed to take their communion, Brooke Shields and everything like that is, and she's murdered. So right away we have this mystery of this murdered little girl. And of course it doesn't end there. In this small community, other people start to get killed here and there. It's not an all-out high body count movie. It's not gratuitously gory, but it's very memorable. It's very stylish. It's very well done. And the number one thing I really like about Alice, Sweet Alice, is I always complain about this because maybe it's one of my hang-ups, is so many of the American horror films that involve religion, they seem like they're just punching down and they're not actually part of, that environment, that insider kind of world. Well, I think a lot of the European horror films like Spanish and Italian and even Mexican film, which is in Europe, I am aware of that, do kind of understand it a little bit more. So when you see something by like Coffin Joe or Lucio Fulci or Paul Naschy or Jess Frank, it just seems like if they're going to ridicule religion, it seems a little bit more real, more in tune with actuality. And I think that Alfred Soul is one of those directors that really actually feels genuine, to me at least, and that's just my personal guesses on it and feelings while I watch this film, because this movie takes place huge in the Catholic Church. And obviously Alfred Soul I don't really mean obviously, but if you look into his background and hear special features and stuff, Alfred Soul directed a porno film before this, and he shot it in this area, and he used local people's houses and everything, and he got in a lot of trouble, and I think he was excommunicated from his Catholic Church. So that's why it feels like a genuine, actual kind of critique of the church and all these kind of things like that. So I think Alice, Sweet Alice really comes from a place of genuine, critique on the church and everything like that. And I think it really works well. I think the acting's phenomenal. He also went on to do a movie for 82 called Pandemonium, which is one of the many horror spoofs from 82. And honestly, Pandemonium's not very great. It does have a couple funny moments in here, and it, like Sidney Lassek's scene, and I know people like Pee Wee Herman, and I'm not one of them. But, I think that Alice, Sweet Alice being remastered in 4K, it looks fantastic. I mean, those are iconic scenes, right, of the attack on the stairwell with the knife going through the foot, which is, oh boy, and it definitely reminiscent of something like Don't Look Now with the raincoat killers, and there's just something haunting about that. But yeah, this is just an exceptional proto-slasher kind of mystery horror film with a lot of good camera techniques and camera tricks. The character who's thrown off the roof, and they use a dummy, but the camera's here and it's a reflection. You see the dummy in the reflection falling, and then the guy lands next to it. I think that's one of the most clever little shots here. The tracking shots are beautiful. The camera moves, I think, well. I don't think it's stationary and boring, but I don't think it's too chaotic to not seem professional. It's just like the right amount of experimentation in the camera work. I think Alice, Sweet Alice is definitely one of the best horror films of that year, 76. I mean, Carrie's also that year, The Omen, Who Could Kill a Child, The Tenet. So it's a pretty strong year. Some good stuff in there, of course. But I think Alice, Sweet Alice is a great film. I'm happy to see it on 4K. Unfortunately, Alfred Soul has passed away since the Blu-ray release, and he's not going to see the 4K, so that sucks. But we have brand new 4K restoration of Arrow Films, Dolby Vision, HDR10, of 3 versions via seamless branching. Communion, Alice, Sweet Alice, Communion's original, Alice, Sweet Alice, theatrical, and Holy Terror re-release. So I love this seamless branching that a lot of companies are doing, you know. They'll just kind of do like the same, like, so you just basically one version, but it's like, so it doesn't take up too much on the disc. I really wish, I know I'm not trying to be a dick here, but Screen Factory really needs to start with seamless branching. When we're putting out Night of the Creeps in 4K, but we're putting out the director's cut, but we're not going to put out the theatrical cut in 4K. So basically we're missing the different ending and stuff, and I preferred the original ending theatrical cut of Night of the Creeps. So I'm almost at that point, like, do I even bother buying their 4K? And I skipped out on their Silent Night, Deadly Night 4K for the reason that the theatrical version is in 4K and the director's cut is not. And people are like, yeah, but the director's cut footage is in VHS and it will look terrible upscaled to 4K. But I'm just not going to watch the theatrical version. And the 4K disc of the director's cut they have in there is the disc that's already been put out. So why buy a movie version I'm not going to watch? If they seamlessly branched, even with the shitty footage in there, I would watch the 4K. It's just kind of a waste of money. These are first world problems. This is very stupid and lame of me to talk about it, but it's really kind of annoying that you got Arrow out here will seamlessly branch 3 versions or 88 films that will do it, and like 4 versions of, you know, the Hong Kong movies on there, or, you know, even Eureka films and Vinegar Syndrome, and Severin. But Screen Factory, one of the most popular and respected companies, and they put out a lot of great stuff that I love, that I buy all the time. I have a whole shelf, half this room, one wall of this room is half of it Screen Factory. So it's just like, come on, guys, that's shitty. It's just like it feels like a cash grab just not to do the seamless branching. And they'd be like, they're like, well, our technology doesn't do it. Well, all these other places have the technology. So I mean, it seems like some of the boutique to smaller labels push forward the bigger labels to get their shit together. Maybe that's me, but I'm not saying these labels are even that small anymore. But anyways, this has 3 versions of it. One has a little bit more gore in here. Original lossless mono, optional English subtitles for deaf and hard of hearing, audio commentary by Richard Harlan Smith, archival audio commentary Alfred Soul, and editor Saylor. First Communion, Alfred Soul remembers Alice, Sweet Alice. Director Alfred Soul looks back on the 76 classic. Alice on My Mind, brand new interview with composer Stephen Lawrence. In the Name of the Father, brand new interview with actor Niles McMaster. Sweet Memories, Dante Tomaselli on Alice, Sweet Alice. Filmmaker Dante Tomaselli, cousin of Alfred Soul, discusses his longtime connection of the film. Dante Tomaselli had a few films, Horror and Satan's Playground, and another one too I can't think of off the top of my head. Where are we at here? Alice on My Mind, a brand new interview with composer Stephen Lawrence. In the Name of the Father, brand new interview with actor Niles McMaster. Sweet Memories, Dante Thomas. Oh, we already did this, sorry. The Lost Childhood, the locations of Alice, Sweet Alice, a tour guide of the original Alice, Sweet Alice. Shooting locations hosted by author Michael Gingold. Deleted scenes, split screen version comparison, trailer, TV spot, image gallery, reversible sleeve, and illustrated collector's booklet featuring new writing on the film by Michael Blythe. So the features, for the most part, are ported over from the Blu-ray. I've talked about the features before on the old review. Exceptional upgrade, great movie, looks really good. Recommended. Alice, Sweet Alice. What else can I say? Okay, next up is from 88 Films, and this is The Lady Assassin, another Shaw Brothers film here. So this one, the plot of this one is, it starts off really cool, really action-packed, and it kind of slows down for a little bit. Still worth watching for sure. So the Emperor is really sick here. He's obviously going to kick the bucket any time, so he has the 14 princes, and they're all waiting to see who's going to be next in line. 4th prince is a vicious son of a bitch. He's hateful, spiteful, and he'll do anything to be the new emperor. 14th prince is kind of the guy that everybody's looking at to be him. He's kind of, naive and very average is what his protector says to him. He's very mediocre and timid and just not a strong personality type, and really doesn't even deserve the guy who serves him. And our main character really is this kind of character. They say Lady Assassin, and she's an important part, but she's not really the main character, which is kind of weird. So the main character here is his protector, and he feels gratitude towards him for taking him in and whatnot. And this guy is a complete badass. In the very beginning, he is summoned to the 4th prince, and the 4th prince tells him he wants to work for him, and he says, I can't, I'm I'm loyal to the 14th prince, and these guys try to attack him, and he kills a bunch of them, and then they act like it was an accident, misunderstanding. But we all know that the fourth prince is up to something, and this is kind of where he starts to exploit all these people that have been mistreated by the emperor for years. And he says, "Listen, if you help me get that seal that tells me who the next successor of this emperor is going to be, I'll help you guys out." So that's when these kind of assassins kind of go in and start the lady assassin. And of course, the fourth prince ends up getting everything he wants, but he betrays all these people, and he makes them all hate him, including this other guy who becomes a general. And all these people end up disliking the fourth prince, and it's up to the heroes of the story to stand up to him. And the end fight scene stuff is great. The last act is wild. In the first act, there's a lot of good action, a lot of good martial arts stuff. In the third act, it all picks back up. In the middle, there's a lot of politics and things, but it's not hard to follow. A lot of the Shaw Brothers movies, as much as I love them, they get really convoluted, and you're like, there's so many characters, and they're so arguing, especially the big epics when we have like these kind of films that are based on true stories. You get thousands of characters, and you're like, fuck, I don't know who anybody is right now. But this one, it's easy to follow, the characters, and it's pretty straightforward. But what happens at the end fight scene is incredibly entertaining and violent, and a lot of good bad guys and whatnot. I mean, a lot of good characters fighting. There's really only kind of a couple bad guys, but they still are they're pretty good. But Lady Assassin does not have many special features, unfortunately, but it's a good remaster. It looks pretty solid. It is in Cantonese, and the special features include one interview, if I remember, an interview with Poon Kin Khan, and that is it. But we do have a slipcase, of course, and I would recommend checking this one out. It's pretty fun, pretty solid Shaw Brothers movie from 88 Films. All right, we're going to dive into another box set. This starts at one title every week, and this is from Cauldron Films, and this is The Houses of Doom, 4 originally made-for-TV movies, 2 by Lucio Fulci, 2 by Umberto Lenzi. 2 of these were released by Shriek Show. I don't think the 2 Lenzi movies ever got stateside releases, Houses of Witchcraft and Houses of Lost Souls. The 2 Fulci movies definitely got on Media Blasters DVD, House of Clocks and The Sweet House of Horrors. The first one we're going to talk about this week is The House of Clocks, 1989, of course, by Lucio Fulci. The big actor I know in here is Al Cliver. There's a couple other familiar faces in here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the old man in this looks exactly, I feel like I'm screwing up here, I'm pretty sure it is. Is he the guy in Cannibal Holocaust, the kind of big executive who comes in at the end? I'll confirm, I'll put it up here or not. But I was just like, when I sat down to talk about it, I was like, man, I knew I recognized that old guy when I was watching the interviews, and I think it is. But this is why I should do deep dive research into every one of these, and I would absolutely love to do 2, 3, 4 hours of research on every movie. But then we would be here for 12 hours, and that's what the special features for on the disc. I'm here just to give you a brief little touch on there. But House of Clocks is a weird one. Fulci kind of in the later days, he had his heyday of horror films from like the late 70s all the way up till probably 82, 83 with New York Ripper and Murder Rock and stuff like that. Then it kind of toned off. He had a lot of health problems. He had weird films like Devil's Honey and some movies that people really didn't care for in there, like Solomon's Ghost and Demonia and things like that in the late 80s, early 90s. But House of Clocks is pretty solid. So what we have here is a three kind of degenerates that are kind of driving around and robbing, which is a common kind of trope in Euro horror movies. If you look at something like Beyond Terror from 1980, we have that group. Even in Hong Kong in the early 80s, we had that kind of teens kind of catching in trouble, tons of those movies like that. Even Dangerous Encounters of the First Kind is kind of the big one like that. But this is a little kind of different. What is that? I cannot think of that movie, The Happening from the early 1980 from Hong Kong, where it's like the group of kids that get caught up in this crime, and it's kind of reminiscent of that, except this is supernatural, so I put it more in Beyond Terror territory. But so they are just kind of horrible kids. One of them is really bad, and I'm probably diving down on all of them really hard, doubling down on them, because in the beginning one of the characters decides to put a cat in a bag and he says if he can get out he'll live, and you're just like, oh man, definitely kind of puts the statement, you hate this character right off the bat. And the other characters in here are these kind of rich 2 old people that are completely demented in a house of clocks. The old man loves his clocks, kind of like the old couple in Dolls love their little dolls. It's definitely that kind of relationship, right? So he's going around winding his clocks, and he has this kind of this helper around the house, and Al Cliver is kind of the handyman around the house and everything like that. Al Cliver is he the guy who worked with Fulci in terms of acting more than anybody? He's in so many of Fulci's movies. But what happens is you realize these two old kooks are violent and weird, and at first you think they might be just eccentric, but you realize that they killed their kids because the kids wanted their money and they were ungrateful. And as it progresses, they kill kind of their maid in a violent, gory way, in a Fulci gore way. And these kids end up coming here and attacking the old people, and there's a bunch of brutal murders. But soon enough, the clocks start to tick back. And as the beginning says, if we were forced to relive time, we would be forced to erase our sins or some shit like that. You know what I mean? It's getting at that point, like that quoting. Remember how it quotes House by the Cemetery at the end, where it's like our monsters' children are children monsters, and it's like and it quotes is it Henry James? You're like, that's not. I don't know if that's a true quote or not, but it's funny nonetheless. So it does this little quote like that. In the beginning, or maybe it's even the trailer, I can't remember, but I'm familiar with the quote being involved with this movie. So it starts to rewind time, and things get really screwy and really weird, and the old people start to come back, and the lighter in the pocket is no longer lost, and it gets really wonky, and everybody starts to get murdered, and it definitely has a little kind of twist ending at the very end, which is very reminiscent of TV movie. The score to me is half great, half okay, half kind of cheesy, but half also spooky and creepy. Fits with the time for Italian films, fits with the movie. Overall, I think this one's good. It's solid. It's gory. The characters are decent. It's fast paced. It's never really boring. It doesn't really wear out its welcome. House of Clocks is a good late 80s Fulci movie. Is it great? No. Is it gonna, I think people come in to watching these movies expecting the heyday, and they're always disappointed. But House of Clocks is fun. It's good stuff, entertaining. A bunch of features on here. It took me forever to watch these features, and I'm not complaining. First, we have the audio commentary by Eugenio Ercolani, Nathaniel Thompson, and Troy Howarth. Great commentary. Ercolani's actually from Italy, so he talks a lot about that kind of stuff. Troy Howarth and Nathaniel Thompson talk about the actors and things like that. Great duo, obviously. I am biased at this point. They've been on the show a bunch of times. Love those guys. Love their work. Great stuff. Lighting the House of Time, an interview with cinematographer Nino Celeste. This is a good one. It's long, I think about 25, 26 minutes. He talks about working with Fulci, a lot of funny stories about the guys playing jokes on him. Fulci was incredibly jealous of gorgeous actresses, and, Fulci, they all paint him as a complicated man, but for the most part, he seems overall likable. Time and music, an interview with composer Vince Tempura, talks about his starts and things like that. Working with the master, interview with first AD Michele De Angelis, who has since passed away in 2021. He speaks in English on the interview, and he talks a lot about bonding with Fulci almost immediately. And the car ride, they'd be all jovial, and then right when they get out, he'd freak out, come on, hurry the fuck up. And he was just that's just how he was. But the thing is, Fulci treated everyone the same, even his daughter on set. He's I can't be nice to you because it will make me look bad. I have to treat everyone the same. Archival interviews are with the actress in here, Al Cliver, and the old man in here, and they all speak in English. They're all kind of a little broken, weird kind of stuff. They're all from the original Shriek Show DVDs, if I'm not mistaken. And then we have the commentary, like I said, archival trailer, which is incredibly long. You can watch it in English or Italian. Fun. Italian horror film from 1989 by the maestro himself, my second favorite director of all time, Lucio Fulci. We'll get into the Sweet House of Horrors next week, and then we'll move on to the Lenzi stuff. But I'm super happy to have this set. Cauldron Films, nice hard box. All four of these are getting single releases, so don't worry if you didn't get the set and you're like, I want to have my Fulci and Lenzi movies. They're going to come out, so. Okay, next up is from Vinegar Syndrome here, and this is not why it's not in the picture here because I'm going to cover it. And this is The Seventh Curse and Witch from the Pole. I'm not covering The Seventh Curse. I've covered it before I watched the 88 films. I've covered Seventh Curse probably 2 times on my show. Really enjoyed the movie. Great stuff. 1986. Wild, crazy movie. Chow Yun-fat. This one here, Witch from the Pole, is the one I'm really more interested in on this set. Even though Seventh Curse I think is a better movie. Let me get into this. So Witch from the Pole, 1986. Kind of more of a fantasy than horror film. Chow Yun-fat is a photographer. I believe he's a kind of photographer kind of deal, and he's in Nepal taking pictures, and he gets an injury after seeing this kind of girl that obviously catches his attention, immediately drawn to her, and he's in the hospital recovering, and this girl comes in and heals him, and she starts to follow him around, and they immediately kind of fall in love. She teaches him magic, tells him that he needs to rule their tribe. He needs to come save their tribe, and it complicates things because Chow Yun-fat already has a girlfriend and he loves very much, and there's kind of a really depressing kind of moment moment. You know, sad kind of love story blooming, but at the same time, it creates this like complicated issue here. And the first like 30-40 minutes of this is kind of like fun, kind of playing like fantasy stuff and jumping around and learning magic. But we are seeing glimpses of the evil kind of bad guy that is like a panther man that turns to a panther midair, rips a dog in half. Cool character. And we kind of like, I love the time jumps in this. Like at times Chow Yun-fat will be driving and fly off the road in an accident, and he'll land and like he'll time jump or location jump to like Nepal in these broken city. It's pretty cool in that aspect. But the last like 30 minutes or so become more of a horror film where our villain brings all these zombies to attack, and it's really wild, crazy scene that's really awesome and great special effects and everything like that. And we have the big showdown. So Witch from Nepal is like a big chunk love story, big chunk fantasy story, and a tiny bit horror film. The end fight scene is phenomenal. Like if you guys ever seen what is the Magic Cop, which is great, has a great fight scene at the very end, the Hong Kong movie. I do think it's reminiscent of that, but it has one of the most amazing fight scenes ever at the end. Like I was just kind of really happy with it. You know, like you think Chinese Ghost Story 2, which is the same director actually, which makes sense that it is kind of in line with the Chinese Ghost Story. That fight scene's phenomenal. The fights in that I remember being kind of really crazy and wild, and this one has a great fight scene too. Chow Yun-fat has a lot of charisma, great actor, of course, would go on to be in the John Woo movies. This is right before he made it really big. And then what are the features on here? Of course, we have a bunch. Newly graded color, okay. Brand new commentary track by martial arts expert Frank Jin. Great commentary. He does that on the Seventh Curse. And there's also a commentary by Sam Deegan and Mike White for the Seventh Curse, but we're talking about commentary track from Witch from Nepal with Frank Jin and Hong. And then we have Long Ni Kai, Hong Kong Master of Fantasy, and that's more about the Seventh Curse and everything like that. But the information is pretty interesting. Frank Jin is a great commentator. I hear him a lot on the 88 Films and Eureka releases. I do think he ran out of a little information on Witch from Nepal, because at times he's like, that's dumb. Like he's talking actually about the movie more than he normally does. Usually he's more of a kind of like actor and stuff, talking about that kind of stuff. But what he really does well, I think, is knowing the box office for these movies and breaking it down, saying this one didn't make money, this one made money, this stuff like that. Very interesting stuff. One of the best. If I had to ask information about a Hong Kong movie, there's a couple people I'd go to, but Frank Jin, if I knew him, I'd go to him immediately. But great release from Vinegar Syndrome, looks really good. Super happy to see Witch from Nepal get a release. I think I might have had a crappy DVD or something years ago, but now I finally have it in gorgeous Blu-ray. So like it is definitely. I don't even know if I'll go on about this, but I remember there was this guy like 10 years ago that was covered movies and reviews and stuff, and I don't want to give his name. I don't want to be that much of a hater, but he was mad that all these classic VHS movies that he loved and he collected and he held dear to his heart were getting these DVDs and Blu-ray releases. He was mad about it, and it's just like, dude, stop being so selfish. Like I want everybody to see these movies. It's fun to discover them yourself and spread the word of them, but everybody should have access to them and be able to buy them and watch them and things like that and preserve them. And a lot of people put a lot of hard work into these movies, and they're part of history and they're part of cinema and stuff like that. To be like, I don't like it, you sound like a child, a literal child complaining about that kind of shit. I don't want them to watch the movies I want to watch. It's such gatekeeping weird shit. Like it's like, I liked Deadpool first. Okay, go back to kindergarten, buddy. I hate that shit. But Witch from Nepal, great stuff. Highly recommended. Okay, the next one here is a theater watch. Steven Soderbergh, who did the remake of Solaris. I think he did Out of Sight, if I'm not mistaken. But I know him from Kafka, the 1991 wild, weird movie about the writer. It's a horror movie, wild fucking movie with Jeremy Irons. And I think, oh boy, is Ian Holman in that as well. But it's been a while. So this is The Presence, or just Presence from 2024. Actually, 2025. I think it was made circuit, like hit the festivals in 2024. But wide release 2025. I went to see this in theaters. Lucy Liu is kind of the main star of this, and it's all point of view. So here it is. The movie is incredibly gloomy film, but it still manages to keep the color intact, which I love. I don't mind gloomy, sad movies as long as they have some color. Even when it's gloomy outside, there's still fucking color. So many movies drain everything. Hey, we're going to put everything in grayscale in post. We'll fix it in post. I don't think Presence once ever going to fix it in post. I think we're doing it right here, and we're doing it. I don't know the facts, but so this movie is kind of like feels low budget. It's an isolated one fucking location. It's in one house, and it's by this presence, a ghost, if you will, a spirit, if you will's point of view. And it's kind of this closet walking out, and they really do create a character for this ghost just by watching and what it does. And it doesn't have any dialogue. You don't really see this presence, and it's just incredibly interesting. I don't want to call it a ghost because the way they break this down is definitely more of a presence, unknown, doesn't know what it is, doesn't know what it's there for, kind of deal. But it's a family of four. We have, a mixed couple here, Lucy Liu and her white husband. I don't know the actor's name who plays her husband, but he's really good. He's probably my favorite character in the film. We have a daughter and a son, complete polar opposites in terms of personality. The daughter is kind of suffering from the loss of her friend who died of a drug overdose, and she's trying to overcome it. And the father's incredibly worried about her, incredibly stressed out here. And Lucy Liu is very much a business-oriented person, more sighted or more close to the son, who is a swimmer, who's ambitious, who's kind of a bully, who kind of doesn't believe in anything. If he can see it, he can touch it, he's there. And the two kind of personalities of the family kind of break off, and the father and daughter have a bond. And there's these great moments where the characters will just talk and feel, or sitting there by themselves and have breakdowns or thinking moments, and the presence is watching them, kind of guiding them. And by the end of this film, I thought that it worked really well. I kind of figured out what was going on in about an hour into it, what was going to happen. I was like, oh, that's the twist, but there's a little bit more to it than that. I think it's an incredibly emotional, incredibly impactful film. I think it's incredibly well acted. I think the camera work's fantastic. I think it's a gorgeous looking film, but it helps that the house they're shooting at is gorgeous. I think the characters are interesting. I think that I was happy I saw it in theaters. I was the only one in the theater. Me and Jeremy were the only two people in this entire fucking theater. But really great film. Really recommend it. I suggest you check it out. But I feel like if I would have watched this at home, I would have had too many distractions. I feel like this is better in a theater environment, or at least turn your phone off, turn the lights off, watch it, but do not get distracted. If you get distracted, you lose it. You might lose the appreciation for the film. But presence, great stuff, loved it. Okay, now we're going to talk about something that has been happening a couple times while I make this trek through the 80s, and it's going to keep happening. So when I make all these master lists and I start in 1980, some of the movies are not on there that should be later on. Then a couple years go down the line, and for example, Blood Bride was originally listed as 82, and then when I got to 82, it was no longer, it was listed as 80. And The Demon was listed as 79. And then when it gets 82, now it's 80. So I go back and I watch these movies and I put them in the section missing pieces or wrong dates. And eventually I'm going to have to add a little kind of clip in the end video for that. This also happened with something along the lines of I missed a couple movies too, like The Golem or something like that from 1980, 81. So there's some movies that I just do want to kind of watch and revisit and fix, but not all of it is necessarily my fault. So the dates on this one originally were listed as 1982, and this is an important movie. Then it was changed to 1980, and this is Satan's Slave by Siswara Gudamaputra, who's one of the big directors in Indonesian cinema. He did stuff like Primitives and Queen of Black Magic. I believe he did Queen of Black Magic, the original. But he did Primitives from 1980, and he did a bunch of movies I watched for 1981. So the idea that I skipped on Satan's Slave, people are like, why didn't you watch that for 80 or 81? Because it was technically 82 when I started, but now it's 80, and the way that Indonesian movies kind of were screened in their country is, they had the whole village come in and watch it. It was weird, and it wasn't widely released probably till 82. I don't know if that's an American release date, but that shit gets complicated. So Satan's Slave is a pretty interesting movie. Of course, it was remade in 2017 or 2018. Really like the remake by Joko Anwar, who does good work, Indonesian horror films. And this one's definitely a very religious film here. So this family of three, their mother dies, and they're kind of coping and struggling, and they're not a very religious family. And this whole movie is about getting away from religion and being attacked by these demonic evil forces. They get this new maid, and she's not right. Obviously, she's in pact with Satan. Maybe she is Satan. And she starts to pick off family members. Of course, the guy who helps around the house, a cousin, if you will, and they die horrible deaths. And it definitely has a lot of spooky, weird shit going on. There's a lot of great imagery of them looking outside and seeing the cemetery and kind of ghouls and rising from the cemetery. And of course, no one believes them. But the family's going to have to come together to save their souls, get their religion and stuff like that. Indonesia is a very religious country, from my understanding. It's predominantly Muslim country. So, this is kind of a religious horror film, but it's done in a good way. I think that there's some good special effects in here, some spooky moments. There's some funny stuff, too, that's just kind of like when they're fighting off, like, the kind of resurrected demon kind of things that she's using, or zombies, with, like, a couch. You're like, that's so cheesy. Like, it's just, like, pushing with the couch, like, fuck away. I mean, it's probably too realistic for its own good, to be honest. But the ending gets wild when they start to bring back family members from the dead to attack the family. I actually think I'm going to take some shit for this, but I think the remake from 2018, or the spiritual sequel, or whatever you want to call it, I think is a little bit better because I like the idea of the mother selling, her youngest, and I think that's just a scarier idea overall. But Satan's Slave is an incredibly important Indonesian horror film. It's incredibly well done. Like when you look at Indonesian horror, in 1980 you had like Primitives, which is the cannibal movie they did with Barry Prima. You have The Warrior from 1980, which is more fantasy, and the Warrior films. There's like 3 or 4 of those. But as you go on, you get Mystics and Ballet, Queen of Black Magic, Leech Wizard. You get a lot of strange stuff, Black Magic Wizard, but one of the biggest titles besides Mystic and Ballet and Queen of Black Magic is Satan's Slave. Like, that's the one that I'd be like, those 3 are probably the biggest for me, right? And then not talk about Putra's, probably his biggest horror film is kind of a crime that I can't talk about it in his actual spot is supposed to be in, but it's a missing piece or a wrong date, and it's a great horror film that is definitely well worth watching and learn a lot from, but that is Satan's Slave. All right, now we're going to hop into the 1982 movies, the official ones. And the first one up is going to be The Snake Queen by, guess what, Siswaro Gudamaputra. Again, he has a couple movies this year. I might have 3, actually. But Snake Queen, this is a weird one. This is one that it is in English, the version I watched. And it's one of these ones that's probably not translated very well. It's really batshit crazy, very regional feeling movie that I'm like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. But we have this woman who wishes and wishes and wishes she'd have a child. They give her the snake child. She comes out of this egg, and she's evil as shit, right? The snake queen is going to do all sorts of crazy things. I barely remember the plot of this one, so it's going to be a rather quick review. There's some cool imagery. The first couple acts are a little bit slow, a little bit weird, a little bit not paced all that well, but by the third act you start to see like a half queen, a half like snake woman kind of moving around. Really great imagery, really cool stuff. It's definitely more like the fantastical, like when you watch a lot of the Hong Kong or Indonesian or like Thai movies, they're just weird, and I feel like it fits more with like some of the other fantasy movies I've watched instead of the horror, but it definitely has its horror as well. A lot of snake imagery, a lot of weird stuff where the Snake Queen basically will get its followers by like seducing them and saying, I'll be yours if you like bring me your family's lives. And there's like this rich guy's the main character, and he's sacrificing his wife, his daughter, and his other daughter is about to marry this guy, and he starts to catch on, and that's where we kind of pick up and stuff. But there's a couple of villagers that get like seduced, and like the wife comes in, she's like, who is he sleeping with? And like she pulls back the curtain, and the guy's like literally like making love to a snake, and you're just like, holy shit. So there's a lot of weird imagery. It's definitely worth checking out. It's on YouTube, but it's kind of, I've read reviews that said a little too disjointed to love, and I don't think I disagree with that sentiment of The Snake Queen from 1982. All right, next up is a prison flick, a women in prison flick. And they're like, Dave, this isn't horror movies, but it's exploitation. It fits the genre. I think it's horror adjacent, so there's going to be some of these that pop up. Maybe some sword and sorcery movies. Maybe some other exploitation films will pop up in 82. But this one I wanted to check out. It's by is it Tony DeSimone? Or Tom DeSimone. It's Tom DeSimone. Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, he directed Hell Night from 1981, the year before. He directed a couple other movies, some porno films as well. And the big actor in this is Jill St. John, who I don't really know. She's more of a TV actress. It's not really my strong point, TV from that time. But the actor I really do know in here is Robert Miano, who pops up in some Abel Ferrara movies. He's in Open House. He's in, Donnie Brasco. Good character actor. Enjoy the actor. But this is a woman in prison movie that's supposedly based on a true story, 1982. What we have here is this poor girl has this boyfriend who's a drug dealer, a piece of shit. He puts coke in her skis, and they catch her. And it's just a funny scene with the skis and everything. Like, what are these from? They basically send her to jail. She doesn't want to rat on her boyfriend. She gets put in this women prison, of course. And yeah, it's not going to go well for her. The kind of prison boss or the prison is working directly with the warden. There's also on the side, I can't think of this actress's name. She's in a handful of stuff, but she's kind of like the human rights kind of person in the prison. She's on to the warden being kind of a crooked piece of shit, so she's always trying to find a pigeon stoolie. So what happens is our lead character here, who's a good person, has to fight for her life. She has to survive all these things. She starts to witness horrible stuff that our kind of main boss, our main prison kind of person is doing, and of course she has an eye for her, and she wants her for herself, and she's got these goons One is Icy and all that kind of shit like that. So we kind of have this prison drama, exploitation kind of style thing. Robert Miano is a piece of shit guard who rapes women. Camille Keaton is in here. She's unfortunately the rape victim. And I remember, I think she said something in the Q&A at Cinema Wasteland. She said after Concrete Jungle, I was never ever going to do a rape scene ever again. It was a very unpleasant experience here. And I can see why. I mean, Robert Miano is a very good actor. He's very intense. Camille Keaton's very good in the scene too. And I was just like, oh, it's darker than the rest of the movie. The movie's dark, but it's weird because it feels like some of the music's like, oh, this is mid-'80s style stuff here, but then it has like a plot of a 1970s movie. It looks really good. It's remastered decently. Concrete Jungle is a pretty solid movie overall. As far as the special features are concerned, I have to say I enjoyed them quite a bit. The opening has a bunch of Banana Man, Bill Olsen in his Banana Man suit, talking with all the actresses and stuff, and they really seem to know him well. Like, oh, I've known you for years, and they love him. The stuff with Robert Miano is fucking hilarious, too. And then we have a bunch of features on here, of course. We have on-camera interviews with Tracy Bergman, which is good, entertaining. Sandra Curry, she barely remembers the movie. She's very funny. And Robert Miano. And director Tom DeSimone. And Tom DeSimone is also cool. He makes a lot of banana puns. But he's an interesting guy, had an interesting career. I really like Hell Night. I like this one as well. Getting back to Robert Miano is by far my favorite interview. It's absolutely gold. But he's one of these guys that just doesn't hold shit back. No bullshit kind of guy, but also doesn't come across as a piece of shit. You know, some guys are like, I say it like it is, and it's like, you're an asshole. And I think you're just trying to be an asshole. He's just very casual about it. He's like, he talks about Abel Ferrara. He talks about all these movies, working on this movie, and that and stuff like that. Knowing Al Pacino from the old days and friends like that. No, he's just good. He's just an interesting guy. I can hear him talk all day. He reminds me of like one of my dad's old friends or somebody like that. Robert Miano, good actor, good interview, cool guy, had a very interesting life. He was a singer before, so great stuff. Yeah, good release of a good movie. A great release of a good movie. Unfortunately, no subtitles. I think it might be out of print from Code Red, but hopefully somebody will pick it back up and put out Concrete Jungle, because I like these kind of movies, and this one's pretty good. I'll be a little brief with this one because I've covered it on a show and talked about it on the features and everything like that, but I could not do this one for 82. This is William Lustig's Vigilante. Lustig, of course, did Maniac in 1980. Very New York director, gone through the Maniac Cop movies. I love William Lustig's work, but Vigilante, like in 1982, has Fred Williamson, Robert Forster, Joe Spinell in it. Really great film here. So Vigilante movies, in 1974 we had Death Wish, and that kind of kickstarted a bunch of Vigilante movies. And then by the time we get to 1982, we have Death Wish 2 coming out. We have Fighting Back. Class of 1984 has its kind of Vigilante style stuff in it. The Seduction. People take a Trapped. Taking the law into their own hands and stuff was big in the early 80s. I know that New York was considered a really dangerous place at the time, and a lot of violence and all that kind of shit like that maybe kind of kickstarted stuff like that as far as the film is concerned, and Italy had their own kind of stuff in the 70s, but that was due to the years of lead and political turmoil. But so we get into Vigilante 1982, Robert Forster, and in the very beginning his wife, I always forget this actress's name, and I'm not doing it this time. She better be on there. Is she even listed? Ruth Alda. She's in Girls Night Out. She was just in Primevals. She's just in another movie I talked about, and I completely did not mention Ruth Alda. She's popping up in this one. I got to mention her. She's the wife of Robert Forster, and she breaks up, this kind of asshole gang messing with this old man at a gas station, who actually happens to be the old man from New York Ripper in the beginning. He was like, "Oh, my balls," with his dog. Very funny. Basically, they're roughing him up. She says, "What the hell are you doing?" This gang follows her home, and they kill the son, Forrester's son, and beat the shit out of her. She's in the hospital. Forrester is so lost and confused. He wants to go ahead and prosecute these guys and everything, and they basically slap him on the wrist because the judge is crooked and the slimy lawyer and Joe Spinell gets him off. These guys walk. Forrester has a freak out, which is understandable, to be honest. He's like, that's not enough time. Forrester has a good everyday kind of man thing, not overly dramatic actor, kind of almost, I wouldn't say cold, but just, he's not overly emotional in his films. You're never going to see Forrester break down and cry that much in it, but he's really well suited for this kind of role. Fred Williamson and then Richard Bright and another guy are buddies of his that are going around in their vigilante group that punished criminals in New York that did fucked up shit. He starts to kind of talk to them a little bit after he gets out of prison. He goes to prison. We have this big scene with Woody Strode, and you realize that William Lustig's a much better director, because at this time Woody Strode was not very mobile, and he wasn't wasn't very good at remembering lines, and his performance in this comes across much better than Invaders of the Lost Gold from the same year, and which Woody Strode's a great actor. He's not come across great in that movie, but he comes across much better in this one, and I like seeing him in the prison movie. And the prison scene's pretty good stuff as well. I did spot the big guy from Cruisin' in here as well. You also spot another guy from Cruisin' and Randy Jurgensen, of course, helped with all the police stuff. He's also in Maniac, staple in New York films. So after he gets out of prison, he kind of teams up with Fred Williamson, who has a great opening too. He's looking right at the camera. He's kind of giving this big speech and stuff. And Richard Bright, and they kind of go around and they decide to find this gang and kill them. There's a great scene where the gang wastes these cops, and it's very reminiscent of Reservoir Dogs, when the cops get shot in the car by Harvey Keitel, right? It reminds me of that. Also, the scene where the child is killed and the window explodes out back reminds me of Pulp Fiction. And we all know that Tarantino's probably seen a million movies. This William Lustig's movies probably deeply inspired him. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't be inspired by Lustig's awesome movies? The soundtrack's great by Jay Chataway. Jay Chataway's scores are kind of underrated. He did a great job with Maniac. It's an underrated score, so is this one. I get you pumped. Very New York, very foot chase kind of shit here. You know what? A thing about Vigilante is I think the last act is not as good as the rest of the movie, and that's the only downfall on it. I think that it's like they ran out of money or something like that. But overall, I've always liked Vigilante. I think it's a little bit more nuanced than some of the revenge movies. It's not so hot and cold, there's an argument. In this one, I've noticed a lot of times they'll be like talking, and like a helicopter will go over and they'll just talk over it. They'll just keep talking. I meant maybe it's like budget constraints, maybe it's to add a sense of realism, but that happens with the train as well. And love Fred Williamson, man. He's just a good action star. A lot of blaxploitation movies from Dusk Till Dawn. Good shit. Always a lot of good screen presence. Robert Forster, also a fantastic actor. Of course, Alligator from 1980. Jackie Brown. Legend of Snow Hollow. Recently died, unfortunately. Richard Bright, another character actor who's in stuff like Cut and Run, a couple Peckinpah movies. Died a very weirdly untimely death. I think he was hit by a car in New York City, crossing the street or something. I think he was an infamous alcoholic. I don't want to just like throw that, but that's what I heard. As far as the special features are concerned, what do we have here? 2 audio commentaries, one by Lustig and co-producer Garoni. And then we have another commentary, Lustig, Forster, Williamson, Frank Pesh, who's a character actor in this. New commentary by Troy Howarth and Nathaniel Thompson. I've covered these special features before when the 4K was released, so this is just kind of brushing up for 1982. Blue Collar Death Wish interviews with writer Richard Ventura, star Ruth Alda, associate producer First 80 Randy Jurgensen, Urban Western interview with composer Jay Chataway, bonus collectible with new essay by Michael Gingold. So great release of a great movie, looks fucking fantastic, sounds fantastic, from Blue Underground. I've already covered this one before, so it's just a redo on it. If you want to know more about the features, check out the old review. Okay. Next up is the Patreon pick from 2015. This is Last Girl Standing, and I had heard a lot about this. People really like this one, and I had not actually seen it. So I was like, okay, well, let's check it out. Let's see what it is and everything like that. And The Last Girl Standing. So this is basically in the opening. We have this woman kind of running, and it's like this opening scene, like the end of a slasher, right? It's a couple people left, and she's struggling to survive, and her friends, her boyfriend, are killed in front of her, and she ends up getting away. The killer ends up getting killed, and she kind of has to get back into society. She works at this laundromat, and she's very quiet, hates talking to people, hates interacting with people, and they hire a new guy who obviously is interested in her and everything like that, and she's seeing like these weird things everywhere. She's seeing the killer everywhere behind her. It's a cool idea because Halloween 2 by Rob Zombie, H2, tried to kind of handle that, the post kind of shock stuff and the trauma that you deal with after surviving a slasher, and a lot of people have always talked about this idea. They've always hinted at doing this idea, and I don't want to necessarily spoil this one, but in a weird way I kind of want to as well, because I think talking about it is a little bit more interesting. So overall, I think this movie is a solid, decent drama, okay, until the third act, where I think it shows its reveal, and I think it's well worth it. It becomes gory and it's good, and it becomes a great slasher at that aspect. So overall, I like this movie. Now we're going to get into spoiler territory. So a lot of movies would hint at it, like Friday the 13th Part 5, right, where Tommy Jarvis is going to possibly be the killer after surviving all this traumatic shit. And now when we look at it here, this is definitely what this movie's doing. We have this character, or Bird with the Crystal Plumage has it too. A victim becomes the monster afterwards and stuff like that, or the Stenhall syndrome. Dario's has done this idea too, but the idea that we have this trauma, what they have to suffer from, and their paranoid delusions also turn them into a monster. So our main character is going through all this stuff, and they end up at the very end lashing out and killing everybody, thinking that they're the killer, trying to protect them and all that kind of stuff like that, and it turns into a gory slasher. Overall, solid movie. It does. I will admit that the first 2 acts you're like, okay, you kind of figure where it's going. It has to go that kind of way, but the final act is well worth it. I think it's definitely interesting. It's a low budget, but it's done well. The acting's decent. No, the characters are fine as well. Some naturalistic, I guess, dialogue, if you will. But Last Girl Standing, I would recommend it. I think I had an MPI DVD. I'm not sure where it's at in this room, so I'm not going to dig it out. I did watch it just streaming. But Last Girl Standing, I would recommend it. Check it out. All right, questions, comments, concerns, all that jazz. Ken Coakley. I revisited Night Train's Murders. I have the Blu-ray from 88 Films Italian collection that was sold individually as well as 15 volumes altogether. My best friend got me the set from the 50th birthday in 2016. That movie has always been had me on the edge of my seat yelling at the TV. The two thugs were butt ugly. The guy with the black hair looked like Dario Argento's mutant cousin, and the guy with the harmonica looked like Robert Picardo in The Howling when his face became bumpy before the werewolf transformation. Except the guy's face stays bumpy. The actor did a good job playing a junkie. As a former drug addict, I can say it feels really good. I got sober in 2010 because the come down wasn't worth it. Irene Miracle from Midnight Express and Inferno played one of the girls. I get it, man. I didn't drink for years, and then I drank like from 35 to 37 again, and I was just like, this is not worth it. The come down is horrible. I never really was into any drugs or anything like that, but I wasn't a big alcoholic or anything, but even just one time on the weekends, it's just like, this isn't worth it. I hate it. I hate how it made me feel afterwards. I also revisited Still the Night for the first time in 40 years. I just remember that I liked it. The detective was played by Joe Griffithsy. I know that's the actor. Yep, who appeared in Pulp of Greenwich Village, Batman Forever. He was also in Deer Hunter with Meryl Streep. Still the Night was almost a 3-actor Deer Hunter reunion, as Roy Scheider was set to star in the Deer Hunter as Michael, who was later played by De Niro. Scheider passed up Jaws 2 because the original director John Hancock was fired off the film, so Michael Cimino put him in the Deer Hunter. The original script, Nicky, played by Christopher Walken, was supposed to survive. Cimino changed it to Nicky dying playing Russian roulette. That caused a huge argument between Scheider and Cimino, so Snyder went back to Jaws 2. But I liked Still the Night a little bit more than you did. It had its flaws. I never got the thing about Meryl Streep being beautiful. She never really did it for me. The movie was slightly offensive to me in the beginning of the movie. Scheider's listening to the Yankees playing against the Red Sox. Yankee hitter Bucky Dent got the final out, and Scheider said, This just isn't the 1978 playoff game, which was reference to the Red Sox at home blew a lead to make the playoffs. It's legendary here in Boston because the Red Sox announcer called Bucky fucking Dent on live TV. I also watched Megan for the first time as well. I put it off because I thought it was going to be a Child's Play ripoff. It kind of was, but I still liked it. It had some humor, but it shows how far AI can go. A doll that people would be willing to spend thousands for. My childhood was the 70s, and I would get $200 worth of presents, and my Christmas tree looked like a toy store. While I'm on the subject of expensive toys, in last week's comments, a viewer talked about Blu-ray companies jacking up prices. The companies need to be careful or streaming will crush physical media for good, especially Scream Factory. They put out Roger Corman films temporarily, and people like me never find out. Right now, I rely on streaming because of my unfortunate position of being in a nursing home, but I want to go back to my movies. These companies also put out Hollywood movies that defeats the purpose. Lastly, I finally got to watch Nosferatu. I gave it 9 out of 10. My only problem with the film aren't that big. I didn't like the design of Count Orlok, at least not when you can see him clearly, which was 2 or 3 of the times. I thought it was funny when he was revealed that Count Orlok slept in the nude. You could see his Transylvanian sausage. He was packing. I also thought the twins gave the twins in The Shining a run for their money. I bet Orlok was afraid of them, and that's why he didn't approach them. I also didn't like the fact that the blood drinking didn't affect his appearance and that those that he bit stayed dead. One of my favorite scenes in the horror movie was in Bram Stoker's Dracula and Van Helsing, when Van Helsing and the men went to Lucy's crypt to find her casket empty. Then she slowly crept down the steps while holding a little gypsy girl. The makeup was real first rate. Yeah, it's a great scene. I love that part of Dracula too. Although it's a little bit different. Chris Orby, have you seen the movie Playground from 2016? And if so, what did you think of it? Fave non-horror movie of all time? What classic movie would you like to see remade? I have not seen Playground. Fave non-horror movie of all time. Let's just throw out the Wild Bunch. What classic would I like to see remade? Does Neon Maniacs count as a classic? Because I think they could do some great stuff with a good script. Movie Junkie 84. Reviews 84. Oh yeah, Night Train Murders. If Last House on the Left was on a train. The director, Aldo Lotto, said he never saw Last House on the Left until later. Who knows? The script definitely has seen some of it. Cas MS, you are hot. I guess, thank you. Nick Moore from Belgium. I've always wanted to check out Night Train Murders, mainly because of Irene Miracle, who was great in Dario Argento's Inferno, even though he killed her off character prematurely because he thought she was dying in real life. This new 4K looks like the ultimate release. I'm going to prepare for the assault to my senses because I'm guessing the feature is a bit darker than Murder. The feature is a bit darker than Murder on the Orient Express. The Boxer Rebellion film looks mighty interesting. I'd sure like to see it. I only knew of said Red Rebellion because it featured an old episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, believe it or not. I went and asked my mom some questions about it soon after seeing the episode. She spoke Chinese, Japanese, Korean fluently and lived in China for some years. Terrifying chunk of history. The only other film I had already saw about the subject is 55 Days at Peking, shot in '63, written by Bernard Horden from Horror Express. Chilling feature just for sure. I might learn a lot comparing both. Okay, what's your favorite train-related horror movie? For me, it'd always be Horror Express. It's Horror Express. And then probably Night Train Murders. Beyond Terror, beyond Amok Train's also fun. Terror Train. What would you do if there was a murder on your train? I probably wouldn't be on a train, and I don't know who's murdered. Do I know the person? Do I look like I'm going to be a suspect? There's a bunch of people murdered. I don't know. It all depends. I need more details on your questions. More and more main film festivals like Sundance seem to be embracing the horror genre. What are your thoughts on this? Is it about the arts or about the money? Maybe both. I don't know. No idea, but people need to stop hating on horror. It's a transgressive cinema, progressive cinema that pushes through a lot, and they're never afraid to do shit that nobody else would do. I hope you enjoyed watching the Flemish horror doc. Genre content for my little corner of the world is an acquired taste. Take care. Bye. I'll be watching it this week, I think. Kersey, Night Train Murders, aka Don't Ride the Late Night Train, is one of my favorites. The haunting vocals for the theme song is by Greek singer Demis Runos. Love that song. Greg Nunez gives me a little heart thing. Thank you. Martin VP, you put the Night Train Murders and Still the Night on my watch list. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Mr. Mansion, alright, let's do that one last. Way Up Dude gives me thumbs up. David Leather, hell yes. Sal Bin, thank you. And Mr. Mansion, here we go. You're someone I know through the years has suffered from different health issues and even dealt with loss in your family. How do you make it through? How do movies help? Thanks, I'm looking for more encouragement. I think everybody has to go through the losses and stuff, and no person is the same. No person thinks the same. No person gets over it the same. No person has the same support structure or support unit or support help. But for me, I honestly think that's what helped me get through is just focusing and staying busy and doing my best, staying sober, honestly. You don't want to add any fire or anything to your depression or something like that, or your health. Do not give up, that kind of stuff like that. Just try to stay healthy. Pick up a new hobby if you have to. Focus on the positive. Keep busy. Keep busy. Take care of yourself. Don't be afraid to say no, but don't isolate yourself either. If somebody don't let people take advantage of you. You know what I mean? Like, if you feel like you need your own time, just take your time. The thing is, listen to other people's problems as well. Don't always make it about yourself. Don't always try to, push forward your don't make misery a pissing competition. I think the best thing to do is just focus on what you do have and try to live your life to the best of your abilities. It's very generic, advice. I'm thinking there's sometimes when I have seasonal depression and stuff, and it will get better. It always gets better. It's just that, the thing is, time heals all. There's just not enough of it, right? So I think that just give yourself time. And don't do anything foolish. Do not make a lifetime mistake for a second of pain, if that makes any sense. So my heart goes out to you. And movies are a constant in my life. Everything has changed around me, but the movies stay the same. I may change. The way I think about them may change, but the movies are always there for me. They've always been a constant hobby that I've been able to embrace. But thank you. I appreciate everything. Let's get into this update. All right, let's hop into this update. First up is Child's Play from the cinematography. I don't even know how they say that. I need to really learn somebody say it and get it right for once, damn it. Child's Play release here. I don't pick up all these, but this one sounded good enough that I thought I would like it. So yeah, let's... Next up is Virtuosity, 4K here. This is, what is the line here? The Vinegar Syndrome Ultra. I love this movie. I've always loved this movie right when it came out. My family loved this movie. Loved seeing Denzel, and it was the first appearance I think we saw of Russell Crowe. He was really fun in it. But this is a fun sci-fi movie by Brent Leonard. I just talked about Feed not too long ago, honestly, a couple of weeks ago possibly. But yeah, 4K. I think this will look great. A lot of weird digital effects in the movie too, but there's a lot going on in this set. But recommended. I know it gets... I don't know why people really hated it. William Forsythe's also in it. Like I said, this is one maybe I have some nostalgia for than other people do not. We're going to hop into and show, what am I? Oh, hop into such a thing. We're going to hop into some of the Vinegar Syndrome releases here. We have Curse of the Devil, Demon Witch Child, The Vampire Night Orgy, 3 Spanish, I think, horror films here. Is Demon Witch Child Spanish? They're like BCI, I think. I think they are all Spanish, possibly. Maybe I'm wrong. Curse of Evil, of course, Paul Naschy, werewolf film. Very cool. Love seeing that. Cross that one up. Now I can finally get rid of my old DVD of Curse of the Devil from Anchor Bay. Now I got the Blu-ray here. So it's like eventually they'll all get a release. So hopefully they will at least. Then we have Crackhouse, Vinegar Syndrome Archive here. Looks like a fun exploitation style thing. We got Jim Brown in there as the villain. Love Jim Brown. Dirty Dozen, The Running Man. No, last season's losers. It looks like, is that Richard Roundtree in there? I think so. Yeah, Richard Roundtree. Great stuff here. Looks fun. I watched the trailer in this one. I've heard about this one before, but I actually had never seen it. I got a classic here in 4K, Deranged from 1974, Ed Gein's story. This is a really good film. Underrated Canadian horror film. Robert Blossom's in here. Fantastic in here is the Ed Gein story. I love the structure of this one. Real crazy, real weird movie. Totally underrated, highly recommended Ed Gein story. Not the only one from that time frame either. We also have 3 on a Meat Hook, which has not had a release, unfortunately, by Loom. Girdler. And then here we have Iced. This is the Gazer video. I think it's it was a shot on film, but I think this version is probably going to be a tape master. No tape stuff could be found, but I love the Gazer line. They put out some great stuff like Redneck Zombies and Cannibal the Musical. So yeah, Iced is a goofy movie from my memory. Next up we have, what is this one here? We have the Terrornauts. Yeah, never seen this one. I think it's an Amicus kind of sci-fi kind of style thing. Who directed this one? Directed by Montgomery Tolley, who is not a director I know off the top of my head. You know, it's not like one of the big Amicus, like a Freddie Francis or something like that. But then next up we have Satan War. This is from Agfa Films. This looks batshit. Looks fun. I like my weird batshit stuff here. Yeah, cool stuff. I've seen that cover before. I'm not sure if I'm too familiar with the movie itself, though. Next up, we have Once Were Warriors, New Zealand classic film here, I believe. I've heard about it for years. I think I have a DVD, but I figured I'd pick up the Blu-ray film movement. Yeah, cool stuff. I know it's got, like, I don't want to say cult following because it's a very popular movie. Very important film, too. Videoman. This is a really fun movie. I can't remember what country this is from. A European one. Very fun movie about a collector that's digging himself deeper into possible danger. There's a great argument in this film about who's better, Argento or Fulci, and it's really funny scene. I like Videoman. Good stuff. And then we have, of course, the replacement disc for Looking for Miss Goodbar. Then we have Disembodied, the 4K here. Is this a Bleeding Skull? This is a weird film. I actually think I've seen this one years ago. I think this is a 16mm film. But yeah, we have a 4K of it. Yeah, this is going to be real wild. A 4K of a 16mm, is that what it is? 16mm, yeah. Very cool. Awesome. Man, it's a great time to be a movie collector, guys. As long as you can afford it. It gets expensive, but it's worth it for me. Jacker and Jacker 2 from Saturn's Core. Yeah, I don't know much about these. I think these are Phil Herman movies, though. Phil Herman's still out there making movies in Florida. Yeah, so that's the update, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Let's get back to the video. All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one.